Okay, tonight we're on chapter 12 of A Christmas Solace, A Stuffed Dinosaur. The post is here, the post is here. Get off your bottom, it's time of year. Wipe out the sleep, pop in on your specs, give the nice ones a tick and the rotters an X. Thank you very much, Snozzletrump, called Santa as he slipped his extra large bottom onto his squishy letter reading chair for another day of letter reading. Things were getting rather busy in the North Pole, so they should. It was December after all. Letters were flying in from around the world and all over, and very crooked Christmas tree was sprouting out magic pods left, right and centre, up and down and every which way you can imagine. The farmer elves were sowing the snowfields daily, and mining elves were starting their first round of digging for toys. The consumption of half crumpets and doubled in the week, let alone is showing no sign of slowing, and as you can see, the handy crumpet consumption graph went higher and higher as the month went on. The Christmasaurus was spending most of his time watching the magnificently magical flying reindeer on their nightly practice flights above the North Pole airspace. He stared at them and daydreamed wonderfully about flying dreams in his little dinosaur brain while the rest of the North Pole were busy preparing for Christmas. There was one thing, though, that was about to put a cracker in the works. The thing was a letter, and that letter was William Trundle. Santa opened the letter, which was on top of a towering pile that Snozzletrump had been plopping on his desk, and read it aloud as he always did. Dear Santa, for Christmas this year I would like lots of things that you probably can't give me, but a dinosaur would make me very happy. Merry Christmas, William Trundle. There was no response at all from the ancient old Christmas tree. Santa frowned and read the letter aloud a second time, and then a third. He scratched his head and tried again, but no matter how many times he read the letter, the old Christmas tree never sprouted any bean pods at all. Maybe it was because the letter was so vague. What sort of dinosaur does young William Trundle want? A real one? Impossible. No child would ask for that. A toy dinosaur then. A stuffed dinosaur. A remote-controlled robo-dinosaur. The possibilities were endless. What do you make of this, Snozzletrump? Asked Santa as he took a sip from the cup of warm melted candy cane juice. Snozzletrump had heard Santa read the letter over and over again. It sounds like the kid's down in the dumps. That's the opinion of Snozzletrump. Santa screwed his face up as much as awful piece of paper elf poetry, which was definitely not up to Snozzletrump's usual standard. He sighed, held the letter in his large flabby hand and took it into a deep calming breath through his white beard. His sky-coloured eyes closed and rolled back in his head, and after a few seconds he knew everything there was to know about William Trundle. This was another one of Santa's special powers. Suddenly his brain was full of William's life. He now knew that William's family, about William's accident when he was little, his wheelchair, his love of dinosaurs, and just how rotten life had been lately. Oh dear, this is a tough one, said Santa. This boy needs something really special this year. At that moment, Santa stood up, and in one massive whoosh, his jolly fat arms, he cleared everything away from the giant messy workstation in his room. Sprout, Spud Cheeks, he called, and the two elves seemed to pop up into existence from out of nowhere, right at Santa's side, their mouths full of buttery crumpet halves. What took you so long? Fetch me my tools, please. I'm going to make this one myself, said Santa very seriously. The looks on the elves' faces were of disbelief, but of pure delight. Hooray, they cried in harmony. It wasn't very often that Santa handmade a present for someone. It happens only very occasionally, in exceptional circumstances. But when it did, those presents were always far more beautiful and special than any present that the elves dug up from the ice. He once made a rocking horse for the Queen of England when she was a little girl, and he enchanted it so much that life came to life every Thursday night. Another Christmas he handmade a toy racing car for the Prince of Peru, who was a very naughty prince, almost on the naughty list every year. But instead of putting him on the naughty list and forgetting about him, Santa exchanged the racing car so that it was a smaller and smaller each time the young prince misbehaved. If he didn't stop being so naughty, it would eventually disappear completely. And so the naughty prince stopped being naughty. Santa was very clever like that. The two elves sprinted out of the room and a few seconds later reappeared at Santa's doorway carrying a huge tool chest on their backs. It was overflowing with springs and cogs, bibs and bots, thingamabobs and all sorts of gadgets that only Santa knew how to use. Now, go and get the Christmasaurus. Go and tell the Christmasaurus that I need him at once, please. Hop to it, elves. We don't have all day, said Santa, eager to get started. Yes, sir, right away. We're heading out the door. We haven't got all day to fetch the festive dinosaur. Chirping the elves as they danced out of the room to fetch the Christmasaurus. Moments later, they came riding in on the back of the Christmasaurus. The elves loved to ride on the Christmasaurus's back, whose tongue was flapping happily out of his mouth, eager to find out why Santa needed him so urgently. My dear Christmasaurus, we have a job to do, and we have to do it right, Santa said importantly. I need you to stand here for me and be very still, because I'm going to make a toy dinosaur and I'm going to make it look just like you. The Christmasaurus's eyes widened in wonder at the thought of seeing Santa make a dinosaur. He'd never seen Santa make anything before. He climbed onto one of Santa's workshop tops, put his big dinosaur chin in the air and straightened his back and extended his long snowflake pattern tail, trying to look like the perfect dinosaur model. First, I'll need to make my extra magnifying super zoom. Oh, toy magic, ogle goggles, Santa said as he strapped some brass goggles to his head. The watching elves giggling and goggling made Santa's eyes look like two giant baubles. Gloves, he cried. Sprout and Spudcheeks quickly slipped two heavy leather gloves on Santa's hands, and he started sifting through his tool chest. He had every toy-making contraption that had ever existed, and a few that didn't exist too. Long stuffing sticks for stuffing things, bendy-wendy things for bending things, flappy happy things for making happy flappy things. You name it, Santa had it. And if you can't name it properly, he had it too. And so, as the December snow fell heavily at the windows, Santa got to work. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was the hardest thing Santa had ever made. He worked all through the night until Starlump and Specklehump brought his breakfast, pancakes with a side of waffles, Santa's favourite. Then he carried on working some more. All the elves crowded round to watch the master at work, as the Christmasaurus stood as still as a statue in the warm glow of the fire. Santa chiselled and shaved and chopped and sewed until it didn't take any breaks. He only managed to stay awake by repeatedly drinking Venta-sized coffees from the North Starbucks coffee shop, with extra toffee nut syrup and a splash of fresh reindeer milk. At last, Santa was unstrapped the thick goggles from his head and left big dark rings round his eyes. I think we're finished, he said, with a warm, proud smile, and he turned his creation round so that the Christmasaurus and the elves could get a better look. The crowd of elves gasps. It's beautiful in beautiful harmony as they saw the finished toy dinosaur. They thought it was almost amazingly beautiful toy Santa had ever made, and it was. It really was. The Christmasaurus shook out the pins and needles from his legs and hobbled over until he was face to face with Santa's masterpiece. He was nose to nose with the most perfectly detailed toy he had ever set his eyes upon. Excuse me. It was soft, leathery skin with incredible detailed stitching as Santa's own red cotton thread. He'd used 2 large golden buttons for eyes, but it was stuffing Santa was cut a hole in his own quilting flying coat and poured in half the wonderfully fluffy double duck feathers. Double duck feathers are the best stuffing feathers for anything because as soon as you stuff them, then they double, make it double stuffed and double fluffy. Finally, to create the snowflake pattern on its back, Santa wobbled to the window, opened up and scooped up a handful of real unmelted North Pole snow. North Pole snow is the most beautiful substance on the planet if you can stop it melting, and Santa can. He gently sprinkled the flakes over the back of the stuffed dinosaur, and as he settled there, the elves applauded in amazement. The stuffed dinosaur was almost perfect replica of the Christmasaurus. For some of the elves with poor eyesight, it looked as though there were 2 dinosaurs in the room. For the Christmasaurus, this was the closest he had ever come to looking at another dinosaur. And for the first time in his life, he could imagine what it would be like if he weren't on his own, if he weren't so different. He could imagine what it would be like to have a dinosaur friend. And tomorrow night, we'll find out some more. Bye.